Hi, my name is Todd Leonard.
And my name is Herb Montgomery, and we're just talking.
Thank you very much for taking a moment to click the thumbs up icon if you like our show. We really hope you like our show. And if you want to stay in touch and keep us with your other subscriptions, click that subscribe button. And if you'd like to get a little bell reminder when we drop our new episode, and dropping an episode sounds so cool because we are so cool. Uh, Click that bell icon and you'll know when we drop.
Thanks, Todd. So, if you're new to this show, each week Todd and I take a moment to talk about the upcoming weekend's lectionary reading from the Gospels. Our goal is to talk about those readings in the context of love and inclusion and social justice. Our hope is that our talking will be just talking, as in justice, but that also something will be said during this exchange that would inspire you along with us to do more than just talking. So, Todd, what passage are we looking at this week?
We got John the Baptist chewing some folks out and telling people what they can do in Luke chapter 3, verses 7 through 18.
Yeah, it does. It starts off a little harsh, doesn't it?
He's not pulling punches.
You brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the coming wrath?
Mm,
I hadn't planned on saying this, but justice for some means wrath for others.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like the first, Peter Gomes used to say this when the first shall be last and the last shall be first. Well, that's great news if you're last,
right.
but if you're first, it's pretty problematic.
Yep.
Like the good news is not universal. The gospel is not good news to everyone.
Right.
You
At
know,
least, at least in the short term. In the short,
right? It's not perceived that way.
you hope that in long term, there's that the hope is that there's a coming equanimity and mutuality that will come. But in the short term, it definitely feels like winners and losers are happening.
Yeah, I think that definitely bringing things back into an equitable balance is a reclaiming of humanity for both sides of the equation,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But
It's an
but
ultimate win-win, but it doesn't feel like that.
it feels like it for those that are stepping up, but definitely feels like loss initially for those that are being brought back down.
Yeah. And I'm trying to compare. I want to find. It'll hit me in the inopportune moment of there's a good comparison to make there that I can't think of, but where something feels bad in the short term but long.
Exercise.
Exercise, yeah, exercise in the short term is especially for me miserable.
Yeah.
But you do feel better afterwards, and certainly if you do it consistently over time, you do see the effects. That's true.
I got a friend of mine who does those mega, I don't know what they're called, like they're mega marathons. He'll run
Oh, right.
for like 48 hours straight.
Yep.
Like they just run. Like no sleep. They just
It's
run.
nuts.
And he hates running, but he loves the way he feels. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's like that.
Might be something kind of like that.
Yeah. No. No.
Mm.
But
All
yeah,
right, that's our
so
show, everybody. Thanks. We'll see
have a
you
great
next.
week.
No,
Happy New Year,
we're
everyone.
kidding. All right.
No, so then he moves quickly from the coming flee for who warned you to flee from the coming wrath. Produce fruit in keeping with repentance. Don't brag that you're Abraham's, descendants of Abraham, because that can happen for anybody. And then it says the axe is already laid to the root of the trees.
Hmm.
Every tree that doesn't produce good fruit will be thrown into the fire, which sounds pretty like Judgment Day ish.
Mm-hmm.
But the part of this passage that I like is when the crowd then asks, well, then what should we do in response to this kind of
Yeah.
harshness? What should we do? And I love his message. He says, anyone who has two shirts, Give to the one who has none, and do the same thing with food. If you have more food than you need,
Yeah.
share it with those who don't have any. And then he, tax collectors, he had a message for them not to collect any more than they were required to, and the soldiers were to be content with their pay and not extort money or accuse people falsely. It was well, I'll say this. Josephus summed up John the Baptist's message as exhorting the people to practice justice toward one another. What John
Hmm.
was preaching was a message of social justice. What are we to do in the context of this great reversal that's coming? Um, Practice justice now.
Hmm.
Start practicing justice today. That's a great theme for Advent. The Advent is about the coming of a world that is just and compassionate and safe for everyone.
Yeah.
We talked about John the Baptist, preparing the way for that to arrive, I think last week.
Hmm.
This week
Hmm.
he's actually putting it into practice in Luke and just saying, go do it.
Yeah. It's interesting what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, uh, you need to be at synagogue more. You need
Right.
to uh, go up to the temple and offer more sacrifice. Uh, the last thing he would have said, we talked about this last week, about
Yes.
he's protesting the corruption in the temple. So the last thing he would say is to have anything to do with the temple. He's has has
And
absolutely
it's not
nothing to do
even
that.
private, personal, inward piety.
It's not about praying more. There's nothing about praying more. There's nothing about uh, sitting down and learning more from the Torah.
Go and do justly.
Go and do justly.
Yeah, I like it.
It's a very it's a very simple message. Not it's not an easy message. It's a very simple.
Not theologically complicated.
It's not theologically complicated. It doesn't take scholars years and years of in-depth finessing to come up with what he's trying to say here. John, this is a hallmark of a prophet. A prophet doesn't mince words. A prophet isn't trying to be clever. He's just saying how it is. And it's share your stuff if you can. If you got extra, share it. And if you've been overcharging, stop overcharging. And if you've been exploiting, you stop exploiting. You stop using your power for unjust things. It's just really
Just practice justice
just
toward one another.
right.
It's social justice.
Yeah.
John's gospel was social justice. I don't know how you get around that.
Well, it I thought that John's gospel was to introduce Jesus, who came to die on a cross so that I could go to heaven. So,
I was with you like for the first part of that sentence.
so that's so that when I actually read what John does versus what I've been told why John came, and then I see what John actually does, that's where I get confused because I thought John was just setting Jesus up so Jesus could be my personal salvation.
Right.
And then John seems to only be talking about uh, justice needs to be done. And when he talks about Jesus, he talks about Jesus as someone who is going to come to do justice. He doesn't, when he talks about the Messiah is not coming to save me to heaven. He's talking about a Messiah who's coming to, what does he say here? He's got the winnowing fork in his hand to thresh
Yeah.
out anybody who's not doing
The,
justice.
right. The chaff. Burn the chaff in the fire and gather the wheat into the barn. So they're thinking to themselves in the passage. And the first part of what you said is where you got, you had me. And I resonate with that. It it's not mutually exclusive because in his telling them to do justly, to do practice justice towards one another, They think, could this be the one we're looking for? Could this be the
Yeah.
Messiah? And again, the Jewish messianic hope that later developed after these events, and that's a whole nother story in itself as far as the history of the Messiah thing in Jewish
Hmm.
culture.
Hmm.
But but the hope, the Jewish hope since the days of the prophets was that one day on earth all injustice, all oppression, all violence would be put right. It was
On
never
Earth.
on earth. It was never the hope to become a disembodied soul on some far distant cloud, right? And so
The
when he
concept of
says
heaven was God's dwelling place. And Earth was human's dwelling place. So the hope was that God would work to make the human dwelling place just and holy, because that's where humans would always live.
exactly, and so he says the one that's coming after you, he'll baptize. Well, after me, he'll come, he'll baptize you. I baptize you with water. This guy's going to baptize you with the Spirit and fire. The very next chapter characterizes what that Spirit looks like, and
Hmm.
it's where Jesus says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me to preach good news to the poor,
Yep.
freedom for the prisoners,
Yep.
setting the oppressed free, the year of
Proclaiming
the
the year
Lord's
of the Lord's
favor,
favor,
where
which
all
is
debts
a
are canceled and land
jubilee.
is, yeah, land is returned and slaves are set free." Basically, I mean, the first half is why you had me, is that John came as the forerunner proclaiming about Jesus who was coming, preparing the way for that, preaching
Yep.
justice. But what Jesus comes, when Jesus shows up in the Gospels, it really isn't about getting us to heaven or personal salvation.
Yeah.
It's about the same thing John was preaching.
Yeah.
It was a Jewish renewal movement, getting them back in touch with the justice teachings of the Torah, in opposition to Rome's use of Herod and the temple state.
Right. It is just so straightforward and so simple and so clear what John's mission was and what he understood Jesus' mission to be. And when Jesus begins his ministry, what Jesus understands his mission to be. It's very clear. It's very straightforward. There is not ambiguity to this. This is they are on the same page. They are singing from the same songbook, and it's the songbook of the prophets of old. And so it's just it's fascinating how, as we come to the Christmas season and I'm listening to all the Christmas carols and the Christmas songs, how the story of Christmas is so dramatically different from the story of Advent. And and when I'm
Give me an
saying this,
example, Todd. Give me an example.
and I'm saying the story of Christmas in American Christian culture today.
Yep, yep, yep.
I'm not talking about lectionary Christmas. I'm talking about American Christian culture. Is the um it is it is this Jesus as this, he is this, his infantness, his gift, his 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 magical essence appears to us at Christmas, and the magic of God begins to reveal itself to us. And it is this magic of everything's going to be okay. Don't worry, it's all going to be okay. You're going to be all right. And,
But
um,
that message sells, Todd.
oh, it's
I mean, there's commercialized potential for that.
the warm fuzzies are so good. And I like the warm fuzzies of Christmas myself. I like American Christmas warm fuzzies. I like it. Um, it has nothing to do with Jesus. For the Gospels, it has nothing to do with that. But it does sell. It's the magic of Christmas is just lovely with hot cocoa and candy canes and all
So,
that.
since we're talking about Christmas in the middle of Advent, since we're talking about Christmas and Christmas hymns, So in talking about next week's passage that we're going to talk about, I was led to the old abolitionist hymn, "O Holy Night." Do you do you
I
know
don't
the
know all the verses.
yeah, the last verse is never sung anymore. Like I read it and I was like, "Oh my goodness." So, oh
That's a
shoot.
teaser for next week. But don't give
Oh
it away this
yes.
week. We'll do it next week.
But in his name all oppression shall
Yes,
cease,
we know that
right?
verse. Yes,
Right? Yeah.
that's a
And,
great verse.
oh,
Great part of
so
that verse.
tune in. There's some social justice Christmas hymns out there.
Yeah.
They're just we don't sing those verses anymore.
No. There's the I heard the bells on Christmas Day is a good Christmas hymn too. By the
Oh,
way,
I
I'll have to
don't know
pull
those
I'll
lyrics.
have to pull those lyrics up too. That's not a story so much about Jesus, but that's anyway.
No. That's yeah. We'll get there next week. But
Yeah.
this week, I like too how he says his winnowing fork is in his hand. He's going to separate the wheat from the chaff. And here's where I think that, well, no, let's start with the immediate context around the story. And that is the temple state had been co opted by Rome, that which was intended to teach us how to relate justly toward one another in love. It's what Hillel summed up the Torah as, is loving one another, loving your neighbor as yourself. It had become so co-opted and mixed up that part of what this one who was to come would do is separate back out
Hmm.
the wheat, the kernels of nutrition, the wheat from the chaff, from
Hmm.
that which was worthless. Separate. I mean, there were parts of the system that did teach good. There were parts of the system that was now promoting injustice.
Hmm.
It was complicit in injustice,
Hmm.
and separating those two and backing out the complicity and returning it, renewing it to its just state was part of all of that.
And, and I mean, and we see Jesus' ministry moving in that direction. We see if you follow the gospel story. I mean, you see him seeking to move towards that that ultimate goal, even though he doesn't arrive there before they stop him. But you see him attempting to rally people together towards a reform movement
Like in
and
Mark, his final destination is I have to go to Jerusalem.
yes,
I have to protest what's happening in the
yeah,
temple.
his mission would not be complete without protesting, without, however you want to look at his cleansing of the temple. It could be considered by those in power as a terrorist act. He what he did. Um,
Right.
he's he was on a mission to change and transform
And
and tear down.
I can't help but think that the chaff that he's wanting to get rid of are the practices of injustice, right? The
Mm,
people though that were promoting and engaging in that injustice, I can't help but think that his hope was that they would repent and join the justice movement. You know what I'm saying? I don't think he intended the unquenchable fire for the people, but for the chaff. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, and I think that's fair. I think that's
Is that
always
too soft?
no. I don't think so. I think the fact that he's he's preaching and he's exhorting and he's prophesying against them is his act of wanting to get them on his side. He's
Mm-hmm.
he's
I mean,
he's
John is saying change is going to come,
yeah,
right? And
Right.
it is much easier to voluntarily embrace that change ahead of time now
Yeah.
than it's going to be when that change is forced on you.
And we saw there are examples of people like Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea. There are, and even though he ultimately did not accept, you have this rich young ruler story. You have people in authority who are hearing Jesus condemning them. The person of Zacchaeus, this tax collector who John
Yeah,
is
totally.
being condemned by John. People who definitely are on in the corrupt system, who are responding and at least seriously considering leaving it, if not indeed leaving it and following John or following Jesus. It was having an effect upon
Yeah,
some
the
people.
tax collectors and soldiers are both included in this passage
Right.
as part of the people that were saying, "What should we do?" Their conscience was pricked.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, it was clearly a message that, as hard it was to hear, it was resonating with certain people for sure. And so I think you're right. I think that this message about what Jesus came to do was to was to make clear what was false and what was true, and people would have a choice and would have are you going to be a part of helping me bring about a true worship and a true and just society, or are you going to continue to try to maintain a status quo of injustice? But I'm here to set it right, and you can join me in that or not.
Yeah, I mean, there's just harsh language here too that I'm trying to still get my head around. Where John says the axe is already at the root of the tree. Any tree that doesn't bear good fruit is going to be cut down
Hmm.
and thrown into the fire.
Well, the question is that meaning individuals, or does that tree represent the Jewish
System?
nation?
Yeah,
And
I
is
don't know.
that John's prophesying of God's mercy is about to run out?
I
You
wouldn't
know,
put it past Christians to write a gospel that was anti-Jewish. I wouldn't, you know what I mean? That's
right.
plausible.
Well, I mean, but in the context of AD 70 and stuff, is this Luke's effort to say that John was already foreshadowing the coming demise
Oh, what was going
of
to happen?
the Roman Empire, rather than
Oh, I see. I see.
by saying that the axe is already at the root of the tree, meaning the nation.
Well, I mean,
That's
if we go down that road, if we take that tack, then I mean, what the history is, and I'm going to try to reverse engineer this. The history is the poor people had finally had enough exploitation.
mhm,
They'd finally had enough of their claims being denied, that they reacted and they had what was called the Poor People's Revolt.
mhm,
And they overtook Jerusalem. They drove out the power families. They took over the temple. Josephus says their first act was to take the debt records and burn them in the fire, forcing a year of jubilee, where all debts are now no
right,
more. Right. And they go so far as to, in their hubris, they think, why stop at Jerusalem? Let's liberate the entire nation from Rome. And that sparks the Jewish Roman War of 66 to 69, which delayed, but finally receives the retribution from Rome
yeah,
of burning the temple to the ground in 70. Right. So to reverse that history, when John's saying the axe is already at the root of the tree. Is he talking about Rome, or is he talking about the social desperation
mm,
from the economic exploitation that's
mm,
about to explode? Like there's like
mhm,
kegs of,
mhm,
I know this was before the invention of this, but there's like kegs of gunpowder
mhm, mhm,
everywhere, and
yeah,
all that's needed is a spark.
mm,
Like we are right on the verge.
yeah,
Let's change things now. Let's
mhm,
bear fruit worthy of repentance. Let's practice justice towards one another.
mm.
I think there's all kinds of directions you could go with that.
Yeah, I think so. And you and I were talking off camera before this, and I think this is, this 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 type of environment, this type of language and an idea, and the idea of the Poor People's Rebellion, it kind of seems to resonate with what's happened with the murder of the United Healthcare CEO and the the broad, what would be the right word, the broad solidarity that many feel with the
Yeah.
assassin,
Shocking. Yeah.
that in some ways justice was done.
United Healthcare, from what I've read, 31% of their claims were denied, which is more than double what the next healthcare insurance agency denies.
And
Like they were like,
I want to just tweak your language just because it sounds like that makes it sound United Healthcare is passive. United Healthcare denied 31%
how did I say
of,
it?
you said they were denied, 31% of their claims were denied.
Okay, okay,
I would
okay.
just
So
say
they
they
denied. Thank you.
denied their customers
Thank
31,
you.
they denied 31% of their claims of their customers,
Yes,
which
yes,
is more
yes,
than twice what the next insurer
yes.
percentage of denials were.
Thank you. Thank you. My point is that when you push people and push people and push people, there is, and I'm not saying this is right, but there was a sense when the wealthy class of the United States looked at welfare, not the way we do today, where the rich think welfare needs to be removed and people just need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. There was a time when the wealthy viewed welfare as protest and revolt insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, give them enough that they don't grab the pitchforks.
Right.
Because when you push people too far, things like what
That's
we just saw with the CEO happens.
that's right.
People become desperate.
Right.
And I know all the facts are still to come out in this story now that there's an arrest and who knows what direction it's going to go in and how people are going to spin everything. But the reality is, this is not an isolated situation. Historically, when people are pushed beyond their limit, bad things happen.
Yeah. I think we saw this with the large robber barons in the early 20th century, and the which resulted in the large push towards unionization that had to take place in order, because the workers just weren't going to take it anymore. And but in that process towards unionization, there was a lot of violence, both
That's right.
directions, between the workers towards the bosses and the bosses towards the workers. And I think it's possible that this may be a foreshadowing of unrest to come, as well, because we all know families, we all have friends who have gone bankrupt or nearly gone bankrupt because of healthcare expenses.
Yeah.
Um, there is, when we see share stockholders and executives up in the 1% making millions off of unfulfilled claims, and then insurance companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield starting to say, yeah, we're only going to fund anesthesia for so many minutes before we turn that cost over to the patient. um,
Yeah.
there's going to come a point where a powder keg is going to explode. And ju- and unfortunately, what the powder keg speaks to is truth, and the truth is those in charge are operating a completely corrupt, unjust system.
Yeah.
Nobody condones violence. Nobody wants violence. The people who respond in violence
It's
did
their last
not
resort.
begin their lives planning to be violent people. I'd be very curious about this guy, about his story. His story is already compelling from what I've heard just in the few nuggets we've gotten. It's going to be just interesting to hear because this is something it appears broke in him, and I'm not sure it necessarily speaks to a predisposal to mental illness. It may be something else. We'll have to see.
Yeah. It'll be interesting as it unfolds.
But
But reality
this
is you can
is
only push people so far.
that's right.
And when it breaks bad.
Yeah. And so this is why you and I and those who join us every week, we hear this call. We hear this call is not to stand idly by when things like this go unchallenged. When just run
Ah,
on.
ah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the passage, what you're saying right now, the passage, it just hit me. John is saying unquenchable fire is coming. It's a fire that once it gets started, no one's going to be able to put out
Yeah,
until it consumes everything.
yeah,
And they're saying, well, what do we do? And his answer is simple: learn to do justice today.
yeah,
Learn to do justice today.
yeah.
Make the switch to justice now.
Right.
That's the only way to prevent the powder keg.
So, healthcare CEOs, change the way you do your business. Find a way to meet the claims and affirm the claims and take care of patients and do what the doctors say need to be done for the sake of healing patients and doing what needs to be done so that people are healthier, costs begin to go down, and society stabilizes and tensions cool. Start doing that work now to avoid. And this is again, this let's be clear, John's message is to the people in power.
That's right. That's
He's
right.
not he's not talking to the people who are trying to figure out how to stave off the creditors because
Right.
they're
Right.
behind on their
He's
medical
talking to the
bills.
tax collectors and the soldiers, not the
He,
prisoners and the taxed.
that's exactly right. So in this context, he's talking to the healthcare CEOs, and he's talking to our senators, our the president, the representatives, and saying, "What are you all doing to hold CEOs accountable and stop taking their lobbying money and start holding them accountable and putting in regulations that force them to treat the American people better?" Why are it's that type of stuff, or else unquenchable fire.
Yeah.
And this is again, this makes this so clear in this passage when we're reading in this context. Of course, somebody would say, well, obviously John is talking about people are going to go to hell. It's not what he's
No, he's
talking
not.
about. He's talking about there's going to be a disaster that takes a hold of this, and everybody is going to suffer because of this. And as we saw take place in what happened in the Roman suppression of the revolt and ultimate burning down of the temple.
That's right.
It was an unquenchable fire. It burned down the temple and
And the
sent
Poor People's
sent
Revolt was an unquenchable fire too.
yeah, unquenchable revolt against the system,
Hmm.
and they couldn't stop it. So it
So that language, just to be clear, that language of unquenchable fire is taken right out of the Hebrew prophetic justice tradition that John the Baptist was standing in. And there is no exception. Every time unquenchable or eternal fire is used, it is never talking about something post mortem in a different reality.
hmm,
It's always talking about something's going to get so bad that it happens here on this earth.
it's a direct temporal experience
Exactly.
consequence to something that's happening in the world, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Which again goes to the thing that God is much more concerned about trying to solve people's hells on earth now
Correct.
then then
Then
does
scare
God have
people out of.
anything to do to scare people out of going to some eternal hell? God is interested in his call for justice to rescue people who are going through hell now.
By the way, I don't think we've ever talked about this on this show before, but if any of you listeners are intrigued by the teachings of Jesus, but you have a really difficult time with the traditional Christian teaching on hell, you're in good company. Todd and I do too.
Right. Yep.
Just throwing that out there.
Yep.
So, justice. Learn to do justice now.
Yep.
Start today. How do you keep more catastrophes from happening? Learn to do justice now.
Yeah. Sadly, what people typically learn from disasters is those who have extra, they build up their defenses. So the other CEOs of the healthcare companies are going to bulk up their security details, add extra security around their office buildings and around their homes, cloister
Yeah.
themselves in even more.
That's called peace through violence rather than peace through distributive justice.
They are going to just militarize more
Yes.
rather than open the table so that more people may have access to the benefits that they get to experience every day of their lives. They will prepare for greater instability rather than being agents of creating stability.
Stability. I like how you said that.
They could be agents of bringing about a more peaceable and just kingdom, and instead, they will be agents of further divisiveness and instability, and they will protect themselves from it with their wealth
The
and
injustice
power.
just escalates.
Right. That's the tragedy.
And on that happy note,
Where's the they will live happily ever after? Where is that in this passage?
it's not in this passage.
Oh,
It's left open ended. He says, learn to do this.
it
Period.
says so. With many other exhortations, he proclaimed the good news to the people. It's good news if you know why it was good news is because
because
the people
justice
in
was coming.
power, because the people, yeah, because justice was coming through the person of Jesus, but the people who were listening to John, the people in power, were actually saying, well, what could we do then?
Yeah.
We're open to change.
I don't mean
So
justice was coming through Jesus. I mean justice was coming through these people asking, what
yeah,
should we do?
yeah. So there was actual hope in the very powerful people standing there at that river listening to John preach.
Producing good fruit in keeping with repentance.
If we could hear from the other healthcare CEOs saying, you know what, this is a wake up call. We've got to change our practices. That would be
be
good
the good
news.
news.
That would be the good news. God help us. We need good news.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot to chew on, Todd.
We'll keep working.
Yeah, I wish I had had this conversation before I wrote my blog entry this week. This is so good. I'm jealous of all the people that may be watching us because they have to teach on the lectionary passage this week. I
It's a
did it
great
before we
passage
had
to
a
teach on.
conversation.
It's a great It's a great passage to teach on. It really is.
Especially for Advent.
Yes,
It's a great Advent passage.
This passage and then the one next week are just fantastic passages. So good. So Advent.
Next week is fourth weekend of Advent.
Yep.
And then after that, it's Christmas.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to next week.
Next week we got the Magnificat. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, all right, folks. Well, let's talk for a minute. It's always good to hear about Renewed Heart Ministries. Herb, tell us what's going on.
Renewed Heart Ministries, renewedheartministries.com. For those of you who aren't familiar with Renewed Heart Ministries, we are a not-for-profit ministry that helps people explore the intersection of faith and engaging whatever area of social justice that they have a passion for. Everything on our website, all the resources there are free. We exist purely off the donations and support we get from people to be able to provide everything for free. Even our seminars that we do at various locations, we've never charged fees for those. So let me just say this too, for those out there that are supporters of Renewed Heart Ministries, thank you for supporting Renewed Heart Ministries. Thank you for valuing what we do enough to keep us doing it. And if any of you out there would like to join them in supporting Renewed Heart Ministries, you can do so by going to renewedheartministries.com and clicking donate. And also from now till the end of the year, which is only a few weeks left, all donations to Renewed Heart Ministries are being matched dollar for dollar. So that makes your support go twice as far. You can find my new book, Finding Jesus on the Politics and Social Teachings of the Gospels, on Amazon. And I'm trying to think of what
That
else.
would
Watch
be
this show.
I would just say, I would just put in a plug. If you are still trying to think of Christmas gifts, give Herb's book. That would be a great Christmas gift. Seriously, I'm not just saying that because Herb and I are friends, and that because we're on the show together. I love giving good books for Christmas. Herb's book is a good one to give for Christmas.
Thanks, Todd. I appreciate that. Appreciate that.
So I
All
didn't
right,
mean to
tell us
interrupt you.
about your TJLCC.
Thank you. Um, I wish I had like flashing red lights and like sirens and like things that said "sail, sail, sail." I'm offering between now and July 24 a special rate for
July?
couples. Did I say July?
You did. January.
What the heck am I doing? No, it's not even January.
December.
It's now between now and December 24.
Christmas in July, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Herb. I am
December.
okay. Now, between today and December 24th, I am offering a package for couples coaching. If you and your spouse would like to work on strengthening and improving your relationship, you and your spouse, you and your partner, and this is for people who are straight, those who are gay, whatever relationship you are in and you would like to work on improving that relationship, I'm offering a special. Normally, my sessions go for $100 an hour, which is cheap compared to most people in my field. Theirs are usually 150 to 200 an hour. But for this special, it's under 50 an hour. It would be I'm offering 6 sessions plus a relationship inventory that will help you. Science driven, thank you. That you and your partner will take, and it will help give you guys insights into your strength and growth areas in your relationship, and that'll help guide our sessions together. That inventory plus 6 sessions together, all for $299. That's less than $50 a session, and that inventory is included for free. And so that's something I'd like to offer you between now and December 24. I've had 2 couples take me up on it already and would love if that would be a benefit for you. I can't think of many other things other than Herb's book that would be a better Christmas gift than to invest in the relationship with the person that matters most to you. So think about that, and you can learn more about it and register at tjlcc.com.
Thanks, Todd.
My pleasure. With that, folks, we are going to get out of here for this week, and we will look forward to being with you for the last week of Advent next week. Take care.
Have a great week, everyone.
Keep up the hope. We'll see you soon.